Are you unable to concentrate on the tasks at hand? Do you need help focusing more or leveling up your game? Here's a tip. Try Cognizin citicoline, clinically studied to support mental energy, focus, memory, and attention. Cognizin supports brain health and supplies the brain with the energy it needs to stay sharp. Cognizin is a leading nootropic, featured in over 200 products. This podcast is powered by Cognizin. Visit Cognizin.com to learn more and find a product to help you fuel your day.
Ready to achieve great heights? Then you're in the right place. Welcome to Power Your Performance, the podcast where we dive deep with leaders in the gaming world and beyond and learn the techniques they use to power their lives. I am your host, Gary Kleinman.
So Power Your Performance welcomes Karen Todd. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it is a pleasure. I've got so many things to talk to you about. I love your history and background and certainly what you're doing. I know you're in Michigan, so hello, Michigan, as well. Your background is amazing. I mean, your current title is VP Global Brand Marketing at Kyowa. But when I look at where you started and where you are, it's a fascinating journey, first and foremost from nutrition and performance. I know that you'll talk about your degrees, but where did the interest itself come from?
Going back, I'd have to say one of the biggest influences to get into nutrition and learn more about the human body was probably one of my professors at Texas A&M, Dr. Joanne Lupton. She was very dynamic in the world of nutrition and just made you're sitting in this huge room full of 200, 300 people, and she made it come alive. And you were just glued to her the entire time. So that probably was the first time I learned more about nutrition than ever before and realized that the human body is pretty amazing, that what it can do and part of the gut, the brain, all of that connection is just vital and so important.
Growing up, was that a subject matter in your household? I mean, were you a part of a family that was eating more greens than the neighbor as opposed to more red meat? Or is it really in that lecture that a fire got lit?
My mother, it's funny, my mother was a home economics degree and taught school for many, many years. But so she knew and taught us growing up about good nutrition. And, we always had your balanced meal at every meal. So it was just something we grew up with. But learning more about what's inside that piece of chicken or what's inside that broccoli, that was a whole new world. And I didn't realize that until college.
Which is really, kind of an interesting place because most people go to college and what is it? It's the college 10 that freshmen put on. So you go there and you find out that you've got this incredible interest in nutrition and performance that has lasted your career. Did you go into Texas A&M as a different major and you switched after those lectures?
I went into A&M as a biomedical science degree. Didn't really know what I wanted to do. Biomedical science is basically studying anatomy, biology, related to the human body. And then I think my sophomore year, that's when I took my first nutrition class and realized, wow, there's something more here. But it didn't stop with just nutrition. I wanted to get a degree in food science as well. That was of real interest to me to learn about how foods were made, and not just the foods that are grown on trees or naturally available, but foods that you'd find in the grocery store that were packaged and healthy for you. I think that was the big part of it too.
When you did that, was food science? It was an established program, but it couldn't have been anywhere as developed as the food science programs that universities and colleges are offering today. I mean, when you go back, does it look to you as being kind of archaic when you look back, or was it pretty advanced at the time?
It was pretty advanced at A&M at the time. They actually had incredible ties to the industry at the time, where as a student, sophomore, junior, even a senior, I could talk with people in the industry, like the ADMs of the world, or people making these raw materials, the ingredients, and they would send samples for us to work with. That kind of blew my mind that they would do that. And then we would develop these foods that, and at the time it was the early 90s. So if you remember the fat replacers,
Yes.
the craze of lowering trans fats and replace it with this, not that. That was quite fun. And we learned along the way, how much to put into a product and what some of the side effects were from that too. So.
I guess and maybe I'm completely wrong, but that's also long before things were genetically modified, right? So most of that was natural supplements or growth or whatever the protocol was, as opposed to now where they're looking at manufacturing those same things out of thin air, essentially, which is fascinating, just the technology and growth. But what also fascinated me is that you also chose to be an EMT during that around there?
Wow. You did your research.
I need you. I need you to set my arm. I heard it. It's actually a test to see what you remember from EMT days. But yeah, I mean, that's fascinating. Tell me about it.
That was a lot of fun. I was a lifeguard growing up, and one of my first jobs that I could earn a paycheck with was a lifeguard. And as a lifeguard, you took CPR, standard first aid, and then it kind of grew from there. And another teacher that just really had a big impact was the EMT teacher. And I basically got involved with the emergency medical service on campus, and it was a student-run organization. We'd sleep at the clinic or the facility where we would take calls, dispatch an ambulance. We also did overnights in Houston at some of the major hospitals with the fire stations there, working with them. It was just fascinating. And emergency medicine it just puts your mind in a whole different state. You forget about things that what you're doing, and you go back to your basic training of what you know of how to save lives. And it was pretty fascinating.
No, it would have to be. Did you think at that point, because I can see it in your face, the joy you had doing that maybe instead of the path that you obviously did take, was there a period of time that you go, hey, maybe I'll go into medicine?
I did. I shouldn't say gamble with that, but I did look at doing that for a while. Very competitive group, especially at Texas A&M for medical school. I really enjoyed the classwork, but I didn't enjoy the competition of better than you. And that wasn't for me. I wanted to do something more with that. But a lot of friends are medical doctors, and it's great. It's a great profession. We need them.
Are they jealous? Because you hear so many doctors, especially these days, that get disillusioned, not with medicine, but the practice of medicine. And here you are beaming, in doing what you're doing in the ingredient. We'll get into all the positive things that not only you're doing, but the company's doing. Do they always look at you and go, but you're so happy? And we're not.
I think everyone finds their niche eventually. If it's whatever passion they do have with medicine, they find it with obstetrics or working with seniors. I think it's a pretty wide gambit there. So.
And then you get into the consumer side, right? So you graduate, you've got your multitude of degrees, and now you got your cap and gown, and you flip your tassel, and you go, I know everything in the world that there is to know about this subject, and I'm going to go help consumers. What do you do next?
So my next stop was to find a job. As a dietitian, at that time, early 90s, most of the dietitians were going right into the hospitals. or clinics and working, with meal preparation or counseling people around diets. That wasn't a huge passion of mine and why I tagged on the food science degree. So I was really looking at food companies and went to an IFT, Institute of Food Technologists trade show, started interviewing with people and just really clicked with that industry and the people doing it. So that got me into one of my first jobs, and it was working with finished products, creating finished products, and then also educating about it. I was one of the first dietitians for the company at the time that came in and educated people on why take dietary supplements. Very revolutionary at that point in time. One of my fellow dietitians said, "Don't do that. You're going to ruin your career." Are you kidding? So, dig down even more. And I've been doing it ever since. It's been really fun. It's been a nice, long, fun journey.
Without any formal marketing background per se, at least educationally, you just kind of start marketing. Marketing is at its core telling a story to the ultimate target consumer, whatever that happens to be. So essentially, I think what I'm hearing is you were able to craft a story for what you were doing, and then you probably turn around many years later and go, I guess I can market, because that's all we do, right, is tell these stories. Did you enjoy that as much as the scientific, nutritional creation of products?
I did actually go on and get my MBA with one of my companies. And what was interesting at the time, I felt I could do the job without having the degree, but I needed the degree to justify doing it. And you're absolutely right. It's telling a story and making it click with that consumer. That's what's really, really important. I've enjoyed it because I can kind of guide and manage that versus being told. I guess that's one of the things I like to guide and manage versus execute. So that's one of my passions as well.
Well, it's kind of interesting in terms of your background and the merging of the science and the story. Many marketers can tell a story based upon the science that we're given, right? And people say, well, this is what the product does, or this is what the service does. Now go craft a story and tell that. It gives you, a tremendous advantage that you understand what's behind the story. So you must be a more credible storyteller, certainly in your environment, because you understand why it is important as opposed to just parroting.
Well, and what's really important and what I like about working in the ingredient side is that you learn so much about how things are manufactured, what's the history behind it, the science behind it. You can even have an impact on where the science goes, what the next study is. That's really, really important, but also having truth and transparency and being honest with everything. That's a big part of the company, and a big part of my background is just what we do, we can stand behind. And if I don't think I can stand behind something, then you'll know it right away. So, but there's a lot of passion and a lot of interest in what we do because it's so fascinating to me.
And then you get to Kyowa. Now, tell me how you get there. It's just. Did you look at them and go, hey, it's obviously a multinational company with tentacles in lots of different areas. Did you look at them and say, hey, that's where I want to be? What's that process to get? Because you've been there for an extended period of time and done incredibly well. And now you've seen the growth of the market for not only supplements, but very specific things, which we're going to talk about and relate it to gaming and esports shortly. So sure. How do you get there? Is that a job fair? You answer an ad, they come looking for you?
No, actually, with Kyowa, they were way ahead of their time. I knew about Kyowa for coenzyme Q10, CoQ10. They brought it to the market, and they were known for CoQ10. But they had asked me if I would create global branding program for them. And so when I joined Kyowa, I'm like, oh, CoQ10's a great ingredient, and let's go. Well, when I joined, they had just discontinued selling CoQ10, but they had all these other ingredients that they were talking about, and I was learning about Cognizin, the acetylcholine product for brain health. Never heard about this before. Glutathione. What's glutathione? The master antioxidant. Why haven't I heard about this? So they had all these new and interesting ingredients I'd never heard of before. But looking at the science, looking at what was behind it, they asked me to come in and create that program for it. It just seemed a fantastic opportunity. And I say they were ahead of their time because I've worked remotely for Kyowa for 17 years. And
wow.
That's a long time.
That's a long time.
And they asked me, will that be a problem? And I said, no, of course I can be wherever I need to be. So it worked out very nice. And Kyowa, of course, is a Japanese company now owned by Kirin Holdings in Japan. So if you're familiar with some of the Japanese beer, they're one of the major manufacturers for responsible alcohol manufacturing. But it's been a really nice journey, and they're always very on the forefront of things. And I think that was always in the back of my mind a reason why I've stayed so long, because it is a long time to be with any company.
Without a doubt. It's certainly in our country. But when you get that opportunity, do you kind of look and go, God, this is great. Now what do I do? I mean, I've got to get into creating a global plan. And was some of that scary to say, really, can I? I mean, not that you ever doubt yourself, but then, sometimes it's hard to wish for something and then you get it. Was it overwhelming, especially with the size of the company?
I've always worked in global companies and mainly outside of the U.S. So the challenge here was to work in the U.S. and create the brands here. So working with Asia, working with Europe, that was just a natural fit. And collaborating with my colleagues in these other areas was also natural. Knowing you create something global for everyone, but then you market it locally, and you really get to know what the market needs and what the market doesn't need. What works, what doesn't.
But you're doing that remotely. Is your team remote as well, all over the world, and you're coordinating time zones, languages, different degrees and different history? I mean, that's got to be in and of itself a wonderful challenge, but nevertheless a challenge.
Time zones. I've always worked with globally, so I would have phone calls early in the morning, late at night, to have that global team meeting. That was just a natural fit. If you wanted to talk with someone, you pick up the phone and call them. We were doing video conferencing with these big, huge, video conferencing machines that you'd have to go to a location for, and early on. But not everyone is working remotely. Everyone, of course, through the pandemic has been.
Right.
And we got really used to having Zoom calls because no one's traveling, everyone's at home. So we got really used to that convenience.
It is, and now obviously there is that debate of do we go back and how much. I'm very familiar with a lot of your current ingredients, but I want to hear from you the passion that the company has, certainly with Cognizin. What it does is remarkable, but I'm going to let you explain exactly what it does and how long. What did it take to create that? What was that science behind it? And then, from a marketing perspective, what's the process in even naming the brand Cognizin? Because you see that on every shelf in every store. Where do these names come from?
Wow, that's a whole nother discussion too. But for the brand names, it really has to mean something to a consumer or to whoever's taking it. And Cognizin, it just sounds like it's related to the brain. It's a really nice fit there. But when you're ideating and creating brand names, you throw everything out there, and then you try to start moving with what fits, what works better here. And then you see what's taken. There's a lot of names already taken. So then, it can be very challenging. We got really lucky with Cognizin early on. It's been a great brain, and we actually use it all around the world, and in marketing the product as a dietary supplement ingredient.
What was the process of deciding to create Cognizin in terms of its benefits, and what's that time frame? So somebody internally, pharmacist or otherwise, says, I think we can support brain health and speed and what have you. We're going to do that. What's that time frame? How long did it take to get Cognizin from thought to market?
Wow. We've been marketing it since the early 90s, but it's been on the market in different areas of the world for brain protection, brain health. It's even used in a drug in some countries. So the brain nutrient part, it provides choline. So choline is one of the most important nutrients for your brain because it helps it create acetylcholine, which is for transmission of information and nerves in your brain. But what's interesting about acetylcholine, and it also provides choline, but acetylcholine is in every cell of your body, very, very small amounts. The highest portions of acetylcholine are found in the liver and the brain. So I would think way back when they were creating acetylcholine and thinking like, why are so many of these molecules of acetylcholine found in the liver and in the brain? What does that mean? So that it probably has, some protective effects, but many, many years to kind of figure all of this out. We first started when we first started testing and studying Cognizin. We didn't know what direction it would take us. We didn't know what the dose levels would be. So you kind of start with a dose that for a dietary supplement or functional beverage, you start with something that's usable, 250, 500 milligrams, and see what happens. You throw a battery of tests out there and see, where it can be beneficial. And we knew it would focused in on the brain, but we had to study this in healthy people. We couldn't study something in a diseased population and then use those same claims in a dietary supplement, in a functional beverage. So that's really, really important. And to make any impact in a healthy person, that can be hard. So from a clinical standpoint, our scientists are brilliant at kind of developing the best studies, the best tests to show it does have an impact.
So I know the company has a strong interest in gaming and esports. I mean, Cognizin obviously is, it addresses multiple issues that gamers have, or not even issues that they have, but it supports all the physical demands and mental demands of gaming. And that's not only esports on a professional level, but also on a casual level. When did esports and gaming shine a light internally where you say, well, that's a target audience for us? What can we do for that? And then obviously you got involved in the Esports Trade Association, but before doing that, where was the impetus to say, we can really be a powerful asset to the gaming community?
Sure. Yeah. The Cognizin, it's a non-stimulant. So it was, but it helps with focus and attention. And it was a natural fit in sports. The gaming part came separately because some of the tests that we did in the clinical studies were tests that gamers do: tapping, movement, motor speed. Those were things that would come naturally and fit with a gamer. And I think it was 2019, we were the first ingredient supplier to be at South by Southwest in Austin. So we were at the gaming portion of South by Southwest and had a booth. We were doing displaying one of our, we call it the tap test, where you would tap on an iPad or computer as fast as you could. And so we'd have contests going. You would not believe the amount of people that stood in line waiting to do that tap test, because it was fun. It was gamifying one of those little clinical tests. And the line was out the door. We had 5 people working and no one could keep up with it. We worked with some of our key partners in having finished product there, because why would we just be there with nothing to give away? We had to show consumers that this is Cognizin in a finished drink, in a finished beverage, in a supplement, and this is where you could find it. And that was really a big hit. The tap test was kind of the attraction, win the t-shirts, win the product, but having the finished product there was we knew at that point that there's something more here, and we should continue in that direction.
What other products do you look at? Well, not even products per se. What other behaviors and skills that gamers utilize that the companies now wants to address, in addition to Cognizin?
Yeah, I think with Cognizin, it's a natural fit, focus and attention, and you're sitting there and you have to be accurate. We have ingredients for GI health. We have ingredients for overall antioxidant health of your body, just making for healthy living. Mm-hmm. And I think that's an area that we need to explore more, and especially in gaming. I think there's a lot of misinformation out there about gaming, and what you're doing is amazing because you're getting information out to everyone. What we first learned in getting into this is that it's such a dynamic area, but responsible area. And I don't think people understand that or know about gaming. Is it can be helpful, it can be responsible, and it is.
It is. There's no question. I mean, you'll preach to my choir saying that. Yeah, I think, you know what, and Skins has been involved in gaming, and I've been involved in gaming for quite some time now, unintentionally, but and I love it. Gaming has not been respected as an activity for so long. So the health and wellness part of that was ignored, right? Because you used to have parents, and listen, I know you've got children that game. You go back 10 years, parents didn't want their kids to game. They wanted them outside. They didn't think they can get an academic scholarship. They didn't think that they can make a career out of it, or that it helped with eye-hand coordination and spatial awareness and story and what have you. But now it certainly got a long way to go, but there's so many areas from eye health, right? I mean, that's a big area. So do you sit down and go, okay, we can deal with eye health, we can deal with gut, we can deal with metabolic changes and strength and what have you? Is that like a white canvas that your researchers say, go for it, go get a team of gamers and see how we can help them in all those areas?
Well, we have an ingredient for eye fatigue, which is a perfect fit too. It almost, we look at it from a marketing standpoint of who it would help the most, but also education is really important. And that's it. We're marketing a product, but we're also educating. And I think that is probably the bigger message here. We have a product that can be taken, it can be consumed, but educating that person on why they need to do it is really, really important to us. So it comes back to that, making sure we're socially responsible and from an environmental standpoint as well. But we do have a lot of different ingredients that would be really nice fits. It's just a matter of the right message and the right partners, the right finished product is out there. Right. Because again, we don't have a finished product. We work with our partners to have a product on the market. Was there ever a thought to actually have finished products, or the company's viewpoint is we'll be a partner with our ingredients, that we're not necessarily a CPG company, we're an ingredient support company? Well, we're in Japan. Kirin is a finished product company, direct to consumer. Here in the U.S., we're not. We have thought about that. We have considered it, but we also don't want to compete with our customers. We would want to do something would be a win-win for both, create market awareness and grow together. But again, not competing, but helping drive success of both.
I mean, the one thing that I have found with a lot of gamers, certainly on the younger side of gamers, is that they believe that they're invincible. So that, having a supplement that's something my parents or my grandparents would take. Or if they have pain, we have pain, or we want energy, we'll go take a Red Bull or Monster, whatever that, with all the terrible ingredients that are in there. How do you get them to think that, they're not really invincible, that where they are right now is a threshold of where they're going, and the more that they can support themselves today, the better it'll be, when they hit 30, 35, and 40 and on. I mean, to me, in our world, that's one of our goals, is to educate the invincibles, because pretty soon they won't be invincible, as we all know. And I don't know if that's part of the education, is to get young and say you're really not invincible. That the damage that you're creating is really foundational damage that you can repair now to save you discomfort and pain later in life.
And the message is really, really important in making sure it resonates. And that's why with Cognizin, it's such a neat ingredient, because it's not just a nutrient, but it's also this performance enhancing type ingredient that you can see both the short term and the long term effects. And I call it, it's kind of weird, but the Optimus Prime of choline, because it's like the best. It's the leader out there, and the Transformers. It's more than meets the eye. So that's an old, probably term not used very often anymore. But
is there an age threshold that people can start taking it? I mean, is it, because these ingredients will help little leaguers. It'll help T-ballers to a certain extent. But at what age do you think that it helps to introduce these proper standards and protocols?
We have studies starting for healthy adolescents that start at age 13, but citicoline has been used in younger individuals, like 4 and up. So there are safety studies out there to show it's safe in this population. We don't necessarily target that. But if a parent were to give that to a child of that age, there would not be any safety concerns. So
that's great. Because most people don't think that, right? When you take a supplement, you always think, well, it's really for adults. There are very few, as you say, adolescents. But that's a great time for them for many reasons. One, it's going to help them, but two, psychologically, the better they perform, the better they'll feel. And then, you've got a whole body integrated approach to health and wellness. And since gamers are starting, I don't know, 5 or 6, I was just playing Mario Kart with a 5 and 4-year-old last week, and getting beat, by the way, without any ego involved, but getting beat. It's remarkable. I mean, it really is remarkable. And I see the skill set from them, and the spatial awareness and the logic that they have to follow and things like that. So it'd be interesting. And then you got to market not to the gamer, but to the gatekeeper mom, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a whole nother target audience, which is fascinating. So in the limited time we have left, I mean, your history and background is fascinating. How does somebody, if you give a recommendation to an early college student or high school student that has your interest, what do they do? What would you recommend for people to get in the industry, to be part of some of the exciting things that not only you're involved with, but the company is as well?
I think to follow your passion is probably the biggest, most important things that you find interesting, to go down that road. I've seen so often people get to their retirement age, and they've been doing something for 30 or 40 years that they didn't like. And now they're retiring and they're deciding to do what they like now.
All your friends that are doctors, I used to be a lawyer, right? I mean, I used to be a lawyer. My lawyer friends go, how'd you get out? So you get out because you care enough to not to get out, but to do something different. Are the opportunities for people who want to do what you're doing broader now than they were before? There's just more places to do it?
Absolutely. I work with so many dietitians in the industry, from food companies, dietary supplement companies. They all have dietitians on staff. They all have food scientists on staff that make the products. And that's just grown by leaps and bounds. And
lastly, your single current recommendation for gamers?
Oh, wow. Taking Cognizin would be one, but sleep is
one and two.
Yeah,
right?
1 and 2.
Take Cognizin, and then when you're done, take some more Cognizin. And rightfully so, because it works. But exercise mind and body. I mean, where does, because I know the company is so forward thinking in whole body that and gamers don't kind of think whole body. They think either speed or blue light or what have you.
Getting up, moving around, physical movement. Oculus is amazing because it gets the kids moving. It gets people with the virtual reality headsets and then the arm and leg movements. That I think that's going to continue to grow. And it does activate everything at that point. So movement is pretty critical. Not sitting in a desk chair all day long.
Well, that's what we face at Skins, is how do you get people not to have, if you're gaming 6-7 hours a day, you've got to get up. You just got to get up and move. And if you don't, you do create a whole lot of anti-gravity situations ergonomically and what have you. And I don't think we think about that enough, and we should. The one thing you have to promise me is more and more research comes out, you'll come back and talk to me about it.
Oh, absolutely. We'd love to.
Because I love what you guys do, and you are like the perfect person with this history from the EMT days to branding globally. And now I know you get 6 months in Michigan to enjoy the summer, watch your kids game, and I am sure we'll talk soon. Thank you for spending the morning with me.
Thank you, Gary. It's been a pleasure.
It's my pleasure, and we will talk soon. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is part of the MAP Esports Podcast Network and produced by Innovation Media Enterprises. Please be sure to leave us a review and follow us on your favorite podcast player.